Imagine it's 6:47 in the morning, and while your alarm hasn't gone off yet, you are already wide awake, staring at the ceiling and doing the same math you've done every day for the last 6 years. You're calculating the rent, the car payment, and that minimum balance on the credit card you keep promising to kill, realizing that you are exactly one flat tire away from a problem you cannot solve. Most people think escaping this cycle requires a lottery win or a viral business idea. But there is a specific group of people who are leaving the race right now, in total silence, without anyone noticing. They aren't quitters. They are psychological architects who have realized that winning the traditional way is actually a beautifully designed cage. Today, we're decoding the hidden psychology of the quiet escape, why it starts in the mind long before it hits the bank account, and how you can stop being a pawn in a game you never designed. To understand the escape, we first have to look at the trap. The rat race isn't just about working a 9 to 5. It is a biological loop where our ancient survival mechanisms have been hijacked by modern consumerism. For 300,000 years, your brain's reward circuit, the mesolimbic pathway, evolved to treat social status as a survival signal. Higher status meant better resources, better protection, and a better chance of survival. In the modern office, your brain treats a job title upgrade or your boss saying, "Great work," with the same little hit of dopamine it once reserved for a successful hunt. This creates what psychologists call the hedonic treadmill. Every raise is matched by a new expense. Every milestone reached simply reveals another finish line further away. This is why even people earning 6 figures can find themselves living paycheck to paycheck, trapped by an arrival fallacy that promises peace only after the next promotion. Just one more raise, one more title, one nicer apartment, one better car. Then you'll finally feel safe. Except you get there, and almost immediately, the finish line moves again. We are conditioned to see money as fuel for consumption rather than stored freedom, measuring our self-worth by what we post online, the neighborhood we live in, or the car sitting in the driveway. For the quiet exiter, the escape begins when they stop believing the game is their identity. This usually happens during a period of burnout, and burnout is more than physical tiredness. It is a state where the nervous system stays on high alert continuously, treating an unread email with the kind of urgency it once reserved for a predator in the grass. You wake up tired, you go to work tired, you come home tired. Then you spend the few hours you have left trying to recover enough to repeat the same thing tomorrow. Eventually, something changes. The question stops being, "How big is my bonus?" and becomes, "In 10 years, what will I have paid for this?" Not in dollars, in mornings, in health, in relationships, in the version of yourself you never had enough energy to become. The key psychological trait that allows some people to leave is what we can call temporal discounting flexibility. Most human brains are wired to value a reward today much more than a reward tomorrow. That is why the promotion feels irresistible, even when you know the job will consume your evenings. Immediate status feels real. Future freedom feels abstract. But the quiet exiter learns to make the future concrete. They can feel future them almost as vividly as present them. And once that happens, long-term autonomy begins to feel more valuable than short-term ego hits. The actual process of escaping is painfully unglamorous. It involves what might be called a humiliatingly small level of discipline. No dramatic reinvention, no 5 IM. Lamborghini routine, no motivational montage. It starts with telling yourself the truth about your numbers. Not the rounded numbers, not the comforting numbers, the real ones. What you earn, what you spend, what you owe, and the actual gap between the life you are living and the amount you need to live with dignity. Before we go further, this is for the person who keeps reaching this exact point. You understand what needs to change. You even agree with it. And then 3 days later, you are somehow back inside the same loop. I made 2 small resources for that problem. The 14-day discipline game is for turning "I should change" into something you actually do for the next 14 days, instead of waiting to become a different person first. And the discipline lie is for the deeper problem. Why you can know exactly what to do and still not do it. I made that one pay what you want because I'd rather have you read it and finally understand the pattern than use price as another reason to postpone. Both are linked below. I'm not going to sell them to you again in this video. If you need them, they're there. Now back to the escape. The quiet exiter adopts what psychologists call an internal locus of control. They stop waiting for the economy to become fair. They stop waiting for the perfect boss. They stop waiting for somebody to notice how hard they work. Not because those outside forces don't matter. They do. But because building your entire future around things you cannot control is a very expensive form of helplessness, so they take responsibility for their financial defense. They begin paying themselves first. Money gets moved out of reach before lifestyle has a chance to absorb it. Before the nicer dinner, before the upgrade, before the "I deserve this" purchase after a horrible week. This is the boring middle of the escape, packing the same lunch for the fourth day in a row, saying no to something you can technically afford, checking a bank balance that barely seems to move, driving the same car while somebody at work celebrates buying a new SUV with an 8-year loan. From the outside, it looks like nothing is happening. And that is exactly why most people quit. The progress is invisible before it becomes powerful. While their peers are upgrading their lives to look richer, the quiet exiter becomes comfortable losing on purpose in the eyes of society. They keep the 10-year-old Corolla. They stay in the smaller apartment. They don't replace a perfectly good phone because a new camera was added to this year's model, because they have learned the difference between looking like you made it and actually making it. One buys admiration, the other buys options. And options are where freedom begins. This path, however, comes with a psychological price almost nobody talks about: identity dissolution. For years, your job title may have been your answer to the question, who are you? You were the manager, the designer, the consultant, the director, the high performer, the person everybody could rely on. So when you begin emotionally separating yourself from that identity, part of your brain experiences it almost like grief. You become a ghost in your own life. You still attend the meetings. You still finish the work. You still nod when your manager gives feedback. But the feedback no longer decides whether Tuesday night feels good or miserable. You stop taking every corporate emergency personally. You stop treating another person's spreadsheet like a referendum on your worth as a human being. And sometimes you begin looking at coworkers differently. You watch someone destroy their sleep for a promotion, cancel a vacation for a project everyone will forget 6 months later. Spend years chasing a title that, once achieved, simply earns them more responsibility and fewer hours that actually belong to them. And instead of envy, you feel something closer to sadness. As you move closer to the exit, you face another uncomfortable force: social comparison anxiety. Because when you choose to need less, work differently, or live on a smaller income, your decision can make the people around you strangely uncomfortable. Your existence becomes evidence that another way of living might be possible. And if another way is possible, they now have to ask themselves why they are still doing this. People do not always enjoy that question. The herd often punishes anyone who refuses to move at its rhythm. You become unambitious, complacent, wasting your potential. People who never asked what you wanted suddenly become deeply concerned about your career trajectory. That is why the escape is usually quiet. The moment you turn it into a conversation, other people begin negotiating against a decision they do not have to live with. Sometimes they are trying to protect you. Sometimes they are trying to protect themselves. Because if you can leave, maybe they could too. And that possibility is frightening. True freedom, as philosopher Joseph Pieper argued, isn't simply a break from work so you can binge watch television until Monday arrives. That kind of leisure has already been absorbed by the work world. You work until you are exhausted. Then consume entertainment designed to help you forget that you are exhausted. Then return to work recovered just enough to continue. Real leisure is something deeper. It is the capacity for contemplation. To experience reality without constantly asking what it can produce for you. To read without trying to monetize what you learned. To walk without counting steps. To spend an afternoon with someone you love without secretly feeling guilty because you are not being productive. The quiet exiter moves from being what philosophers called an animal labyrinth, a creature whose existence is organized almost entirely around labor, to a human being who has reclaimed autonomy, competence, and connection. And then eventually, the day comes. There is no dramatic resignation, no cinematic soundtrack, no viral video titled, "I quit my 6-figure job." It happens on an ordinary Tuesday. You send a short, professional email. You close the laptop. You walk through the parking garage and step outside into completely normal daylight. Cars still move. People still check their phones. Somebody is probably annoyed about traffic. And behind you, the building keeps running. The company keeps operating. The meetings continue. The emails continue. Because the system never needed you in the way you were taught to believe it needed you. That belief was useful. It kept you available. It kept you anxious. It kept you running. And this is the profound insight. The race does not end when you get rich. It ends the second you stop running for people who were never really watching you anyway. You were not born to become a useful input in a system optimized for predictability. You were not born so your entire existence could be summarized in quarterly performance reviews, salary bands, and LinkedIn titles. There is a life outside the scoreboard, a quiet one, maybe even a smaller one, but one that actually belongs to you. So if you feel that quiet crack forming in your chest at 6:47 in the morning, do not automatically numb it. Do not immediately reach for your phone. Do not tell yourself you are simply lazy, ungrateful, or going through a phase. Maybe that discomfort is information. Maybe some part of your brain is finally asking whether the life you are working so hard to maintain is actually the life you chose. Stop seeing your income only as a paycheck. Start seeing part of it as seed capital for your freedom. Every dollar you keep is a tiny employee working for your future self. Every unnecessary status purchase you refuse is a little piece of your life you no longer have to sell later. Your future self is not waiting for one more promotion, one more raise, one perfect opportunity. They are waiting for one quiet decision. Pay yourself first, need less approval, build more options, and slowly become the kind of person who can walk away. Go find the exit that has always existed. And remember, if nobody notices you're winning, that isn't a tragedy. It's the whole point.